Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling James Altucher's book, Skip the Line. It's got this subtitle, The 10,000 Experiments Rule and Other Surprising Advice.
Yeah, it's definitely surprising advice. He really pushes back against, the usual paths to success.
Absolutely. This isn't your standard how-to guide. He's all about challenging how we think about getting ahead in business, career, life, the whole package. And we're going to try and pull out the really valuable stuff for you.
That's the plan. Altucher's main idea, really, is that you can speed things up significantly, your progress, I mean, by thinking differently, running experiments.
Strategic experiments, yeah.
Exactly. So our goal here is to give everyone listening a really solid but, manageable overview. You want you to get the key concepts, the arguments, how you might actually use these ideas.
Right. Actionable knowledge, but without feeling like you just read a textbook. We'll go through the big ideas chapter by chapter, look at his examples, his main takeaways.
And hopefully give you a really clear picture of this whole skip the line way of thinking.
Okay, let's dive in. The introduction. It's got a great title. You can't do that.
Yeah, he starts strong. Really personal stories right off the bat about people basically telling him no way. Like that HBO marketing head who just shot down his ambitions.
Oof. We've all been there, haven't we? Someone just dismissing your big idea.
Totally. And then he gets into some heavier stuff.
Yeah.
9/11, losing everything financially. Again.
That shit-covered payphone story. Wow. It's such a raw image of hitting absolute rock bottom.
It really is. And it feels so unexpected, right?
Yeah.
Failure hitting you out of nowhere.
But he uses these low points, doesn't he, to set up the main theme.
Exactly. He's showing you, look, this is what it feels like to be told no, to face massive setbacks. And that's why we need different strategies, these skip-the-line techniques. It's about navigating that kind of uncertainty.
And he introduces one of those key ideas right away, the 10,000 experiments rule. We'll get deeper into that, obviously.
Yeah. But even here, he warns against getting stuck in what he calls failure porn. Just dwelling on the bad stuff, worrying about what others think.
Right. Wasting energy on things you can't control. It's about action.
It's a huge shift. From just thinking about failure to actively doing something, experimenting.
So he wraps up the intro posing that big question. How do you find what you love and get good fast without the whole 10,000 hours thing?
Mm-hmm. Which leads us perfectly into Chapter 2 and the 1% rule.
Okay, so this comes after another financial crash for him, right? Around 2002.
Yeah, he's basically starting over and wants to become a pro investor from zero.
And that's where this 1% rule comes in. The idea that tiny daily improvements, they add up.
They compound, exactly. It's the power of consistency.
Yeah.
Small steps every single day lead to massive results over time.
He uses that chess example with his friend Rob.
Right. Rob played for ages but didn't really focus on getting better. Altucher says, imagine if he'd just studied like 15 minutes a day.
Compounding effect would have been huge.
Huge. And it's not just chess or finance. It applies to learning anything. For listeners, what's one tiny thing you could learn or practice daily about a topic you're into? That's the 1%.
And he connects this to generating ideas, too. He calls it idea sex, which is a term.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But the point is, applying that 1% daily effort to idea generation, to running small experiments, it builds a unique way of seeing things. It's about constant small growth everywhere.
He brings in people like Coolio, Vonnegut, Picasso.
Yeah, maybe they didn't call it the 1% rule, but look at their output. Picasso apparently made multiple pieces a day. That consistent creation, that's compounding in action.
And he tackles that feeling some people might have, like, oh, I'm too old to start this now.
He says compounding works fast. At any age, you start making those small daily improvements, and you see results quicker than you might think. It's never too late.
That's definitely encouraging for anyone learning something new. That little bit you do each day, it adds up faster than you realize.
Absolutely. It's the perfect setup for Chapter 3, which is the big one. The 10,000 experiments rule.
Right. This is his main challenge to that famous 10,000-hour rule. He basically says, that's old news.
Pretty much. He argues that in today's world, things change too fast for just slow, deliberate practice in one thing. His alternative. The 10,000 experiments rule. It's about learning and succeeding faster by trying lots of small things.
Small, low-risk things, right?
Crucially, yes.
Yeah.
Low risk. He uses Edison working on batteries correcting the light bulb myth, actually as an example, loads of attempts, but each failure wasn't catastrophic. It just gave more information.
And each experiment ideally gives you that 1% knowledge increase we just talked about.
Exactly. It links back perfectly. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
Experiment, learn, maybe 1%, adjust, experiment again. Continuous learning through doing.
That story about his friend testing tie-dyed shirts with a cheap Facebook ad is a great little example.
Totally. Quick, cheap, got real market feedback instantly. No need to invest loads up front. That's the spirit.
He also talks about his own early software experiment for stock patterns.
Between 2002 and 2005. He admits the approach itself isn't ideal now, but it shows him learning by doing, by setting up the experiment and seeing what happened.
So for anyone listening who wants those aha moments, this is a way to generate them more often.
That's the idea. Every experiment, win or lose, teaches you something valuable. Which brings us nicely to Chapter 4, Breaking the Mirror.
The mirror. Okay, what's that about?
It's basically how we let other people's opinions define us. That you can't do that voice, but reflected back at us from others. We start believing their limitations for us.
So it stops you from even trying things because you've accepted someone else's view of what you're capable of.
Precisely. Altucher argues that believing the mirror traps you. You can't follow your own path or gain real knowledge from your own experiences if you're stuck seeing yourself through someone else's eyes.
He used his own HBO experience here, right? The weird 3 a.m. interviews.
He did a 3M web show, totally unconventional. People probably thought it was nuts. But he ignored the mirror, the potential skepticism, and just did it because he was curious.
Then it wasn't just some random project. It led to his first company.
Right. It shows what can happen when you break free from what others think you should do.
Yeah.
And just follow your own experiment.
So the key is saying, I can, pursuing the experiment, but not being totally fixated on the outcome. More about the learning.
That's a huge part of it. Focus on the quest for knowledge through the experiment itself. That's real freedom.
That feels really relevant for anyone trying something new and facing doubts, either from others or themselves.
Definitely. Which leads us into Chapter 5, Borrowing Time.
Borrowing time. Intriguing. Like finding shortcuts.
Sort of. It's about leveraging skills or knowledge you already have from one area and applying them to a new one. It gives you a head start, accelerates the learning.
Okay, like the Pele example.
Exactly. His background, playing futsal, small ball, small space, developed incredible footwork and quick thinking. When he moved to regular soccer, he could apply those highly developed skills and excel much faster than others. He borrowed that futsal skill.
So skills from one passion might unexpectedly help in another.
And Altucher stresses being open to where your passions lead, not having a fixed idea of the outcome. That's key to skipping the line. You might find surprising connections.
Interesting. He also touches on relationships here.
Briefly, yeah. Just cautioning that trying too hard to impress someone early on can kind of skew the results of the experiment, getting to know them. It becomes less authentic.
Makes sense. So for listeners, it's about looking at your whole skill set, even seemingly unrelated stuff.
Yes. You might have hidden advantages for learning something new, which connects to Chapter 6 and a really practical framework, plus, minus, equals.
The Frank Shamrock framework. Okay, break
Yeah.
that down.
So Shamrock, the MMA legend, had this system for rapid improvement based on who you surround yourself with. 3 groups, plus, minus, equals.
Plus his mentors, right? People ahead of you.
Exactly. Finding good mentors, real or even virtual, like studying Warren Buffett, like Altucher did for investing. Learning from their wins and mistakes.
And he says don't just ask to pick their brain. Offer value first.
Yes. Find a way to help them. Solve a problem for them.
Yeah.
That's how you build real mentorship relationships.
Okay, then minus. That sounds like trouble.
It is.
Yeah.
These are the detractors, the energy vampires, the people who drag you down or dismiss your efforts. Identify them, Altucher says, and minimize their influence consciously.
Makes sense. And equal.
Your peers, people on a similar level, doing similar things. You compete with them, sure, but also collaborate, share ideas, push each other. He uses the PayPal Mafia as a prime example of a powerful equals group.
That's a really concrete way to think about your network when you're trying to learn or grow. Who's your plus minus equals?
Super practical. Now let's talk Chapter 7, the movable feast.
Sounds dynamic. What does he mean by that?
It's about the idea that success isn't fixed. What works today might not work tomorrow. The landscape is always shifting, so you need to keep learning, keep adapting. It's a feast, but it keeps moving.
He talks about his own cycles of success and then going broke again.
Yeah, he's really honest about that. It drives home the danger of complacency. You can't just reach a goal and stop. The feast might move on without you.
So self-awareness becomes key. Knowing who you are, why you're doing something.
Crucial. Asking, who am I? Why this? Why now? Helps you stay grounded and make smart choices when things inevitably change or you enter a new environment.
So for learners, it reinforces that learning is never really done. It's constant.
Always, which ties into Chapter 8 and idea sex.
Okay, we got to unpack that term. What is idea sex?
Uh, it's his memorable phrase for combining two or more existing ideas to create something new. Taking idea A, mixing it with idea B, and boom, a new idea C emerges. He thinks this is often faster and more powerful than trying to invent something totally from scratch.
Like YouTube. Video existed, sharing existed. They just combined them brilliantly.
Perfect example. Or think about the PayPal mafia again. They took their knowledge from PayPal and combined it with other ideas to launch LinkedIn, Yelp, YouTube. Loads of new ventures came from combining that core experience with new concepts.
He also says purpose isn't something you just find ready-made.
Right. It's more like clues you discover along the way. By doing things, by experimenting with ideas, you find what clicks, what gives you energy. It emerges from action.
And he suggests a daily practice to help this. Physical, emotional.
4 parts. Physical health, emotional health, good relationships, mental, creativity like writing 10 ideas a day, and spiritual, some form of surrender or connection. This daily habit creates fertile ground for ideas and purpose to grow.
So for listeners absorbing info, it's about actively trying to connect the dots, seeing how different bits of knowledge could combine.
Yes, don't just collect facts, look for the combinations, which leads to Chapter 9, be the only.
Don't be the best, be the only. That's the quote, right? From Kevin Kelly.
That's the one. It's about finding your unique angle, your niche. Instead of battling to be slightly better than everyone else in a huge field, find a space where you are uniquely you.
So it's less about pure competition on standard metrics.
And more about differentiation, combining your specific skills, interests, and perspectives in a way no one else does. That's where fulfillment and often less direct competition lies.
It's a call to kind of step off the main track and define your own game.
Exactly. Reclaim your own path. Don't just follow the herd, which requires generating and evaluating ideas. Leading to Chapter 10, learn idea calculus.
Idea calculus sounds mathematical, but it's more about the process.
Yeah, it's the constant practice of generating lots of ideas and then filtering, testing, refining them. It's a numbers game. More ideas mean a better chance of a great one, but you also need the calculus part, the evaluation.
He tells that story about building an early version of WordPress, but missing the boat.
Right. He had the core tech idea, but lacked the business skills, the calculus, to see its full potential or market it effectively.
So brilliant ideas aren't enough. You need the surrounding skills to make them happen.
That's the critical takeaway. You need that foundational knowledge, business, marketing, whatever's relevant to actually capitalize on your innovations.
Yeah, got it. Now, Chapter 11 goes back to the Shamrocks. Bob Shamrock's foster care system.
Yeah, it focuses on Bob Shamrock's parenting approach with Frank Juarez. Keep kids busy, build pride in what they do, and really double down on their genuine interests. Find what they're good at and pour energy into it.
And he brings back plus minus equals again here.
Reinforcing its importance as a core principle for growth, learned through that real-world system.
Okay, Chapter 12 gets into specific techniques, like how to be invisible. Seems counterintuitive for success.
It does, right? But it's about prioritizing learning and contributing over seeking attention or climbing the ladder right away. Focus on getting really good and adding value, quietly if needed.
The Dan Moglia story fits here perfectly. CEO steps down to be an unpaid assistant coach.
Exactly. He wanted to learn football coaching from the ground up. He made himself invisible in terms of status to gain deep access and knowledge.
And Altucher says focus on making others look good.
Yeah, that's a key part. Help your boss, your team succeed. That builds trust and goodwill, and often leads to your own opportunities later, without you having to grab the spotlight.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's jump to Chapter 16. Wobble without falling down. Handling setbacks.
Pretty much. It's about resilience. You will face challenges, things will go wrong, you'll wobble. The key is learning how to recover and not let it completely derail you.
He shares some personal regrets, like not taking that VR job.
Yeah, due to insecurity. And spending years on unpublished novels. It shows how fear of failure, that fear of wobbling, can hold you back from experimenting and learning.
But he suggests having multiple interests helps, like a safety net.
Definitely. If one area of your life or work hits a rough patch, having other things you're pursuing, other skills you're building, other interests provide stability, perspective, and maybe even solutions for the original problem.
So for learning, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Having a few areas you're exploring can buffer you if one gets frustrating.
Exactly. It builds overall resilience, which ties into managing your resources, like in Chapter 17, take back your time.
The classic 8-hour workday critique. He thinks a lot of it is wasted.
He does. Meetings, distractions, busy work. He argues that real, focused, productive time is often much less.
And we should reclaim that wasted time for our own stuff. Passions, learning, side businesses.
That's the call to action. Productivity isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. It's about self-improvement, using your time for what truly matters to you.
He did this himself, right? Building his web business while still at HBO.
Using those off hours, those pockets of reclaimed time, it shows it's possible.
He brings in the 80-20 rule here, the Pareto principle.
Yeah, that 20% of effort yields 80% of results.
Yeah.
But he adds his own spin.
The chess master analogy, like getting really good might not be worth the extra slog.
Kind of. It's about diminishing returns. Is the huge extra effort to go from very good to world-class in one narrow thing the best use of your limited time for your overall goals? Maybe focusing that effort elsewhere yields more value. Optimize.
And his stock market website, he applied a variation, the 501 rule.
Right. He found 1% of his content. The Q&A with experts drove 50% of the traffic, so he focused all his energy there, cut the rest. That focus led to huge growth in selling the site.
So for learning, figure out what methods or sources give you the biggest bang for your buck. Focus your time there.
That's the takeaway. Be ruthless about where you spend your learning time, which connects to Chapter 18. Access is better than ownership.
Okay, this feels very modern economy. Owning stuff is less important than being able to use stuff.
That's the core argument. Access to networks, resources, platforms, opportunities, often more valuable than owning the physical asset or the company structure.
Like Joey getting into the Secret Service by offering free help. He got access, not ownership.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
He provided value, free law clerk, to gain invaluable access and experience.
And Dan Moglia, again, coaching football without needing the money. Access to his passion mattered more than ownership or status.
Right. It circles back to adding value. If you focus on helping others and contributing, you often gain access that ownership alone can't buy.
Which sets up Chapter 19 nicely. The spoke and wheel, monetizing that value or passion.
Exactly. This is a framework for taking a core interest or skill that's the wheel and creating multiple related ventures or products around it. Those are the spokes.
Like Star Wars. The movie's the wheel, and then books, comics, toys, shows. Those are all spokes.
Precisely. So identify your core wheel. What are you passionate about? What's your expertise? Then brainstorm spokes. For investing, Altucher lists spokes like courses, newsletters, paid groups, merchandise, books.
Marie Kondo's tidying method is another example he gives. One core idea, multiple spokes, like books, shows, consulting.
It encourages listeners to think, how can I expand on my core interest? How can I share my knowledge or passion in different ways, maybe even monetize it?
Okay, taking it bigger picture in Chapter 20. 3 ways to make a billion-dollar business.
Yeah, he offers 3 models. First, the Zipcar model, excess want launch platform.
Connecting people who have too much of something, like cars sitting idle, with people who need it, using a platform to manage it.
Exactly. The platform facilitates the connection between excess supply and unmet demand.
Second model. God, humans undata. That sounds philosophical.
It traces how we solve problems. First, maybe religion, God, then human experts, lawyers, doctors. Now, increasingly, data and algorithms. Think marriage, matchmaking sites, law, LegalZoom, content, Netflix recommendations.
And the opportunity is in that shift to data, finding areas not yet disrupted by data-driven solutions.
That's where he sees huge potential, like LegalZoom automating legal services that were previously only accessible through human lawyers.
Okay, and the third model, idea multiplication.
Basically, idea sex on a grand scale, combining simple existing concepts in new ways, like G.I. Joe combined dolls for girls with military themes for boys.
Or Tyra Banks mixing modeling with the American Idol format.
Right. See novel combinations that create something much bigger.
Cool. Now, Chapter 21, the inserto technique. This sounds like risk management.
It is, drawing heavily from Nassim Taleb. Inserto refers to uncertainty, especially those rare, high-impact black swan events you can't easily predict.
So, different from regular known risks.
Yeah. You can model known risks to some extent. Black swans blindside you. So Altucher emphasizes having skin in the game.
Meaning you have something personal to lose.
Exactly. It forces you to be more careful, do your homework, reduce risk where you can because you're personally invested in the outcome.
And skipping the line inherently involves uncertainty, right? Because you're doing something new.
It does. But the flip side is that higher perceived risk can lead to higher rewards. The trick is to structure your experiments so the downside is limited, even if the upside is huge. Manage the potential damage.
Makes sense. Now, chapter 22, the 3,150 millions rule. What's that one?
That's one where the book excerpts we have don't actually spell it out. Given the context, it probably relates to networking or scaling influence.
Yeah.
Maybe Dunbar's numbers involved.
Okay, so it's likely about connection numbers or scaling.
Seems probable.
Yeah.
But yeah, the specific mechanics aren't detailed in what we've seen. Definitely something for listeners to check out in the full book if they're curious.
Good point. All right, let's wrap up with the final chapter we have notes on, chapter 23, What to Tell Your Kids, or 10 plus rules for living a good life.
Yeah, this is Altucher distilling life lessons, framed as advice for his kids, but really, it's for everyone. Short, punchy rules.
Like the one about being secretly good to people is heroic, but being famous just to be famous is not.
Right. Value substance and genuine kindness over superficial fame. Powerful stuff.
And the one about relationships basically defining your life. Good ones, good life. Bad ones, bad life. And choosing your audience carefully.
Mm-hmm. Audience selection is better than audience development. Choose who you surround yourself with wisely. It's critical.
There's also that one about agreement. If everyone agrees, maybe it's wrong. If no one agrees, maybe it's important. Question things.
Yes. Always ask why. Dig deeper than the surface consensus. Think critically.
And it ends simply with, don't forget to call me, I love you, which is nice.
It brings it back to the personal.
Yeah.
These aren't just business tactics. They're principles for a whole life.
So let's try and summarize the big picture from Skip the Line. We've covered a lot.
We have. It boils down to core ideas, like the power of tiny, consistent steps with the 1% rule, the speed and learning you get from the 10,000 experiments rule,
Breaking free from limitations, others put on you that mirror. Using your existing skills in new ways by borrowing time.
building the right network with plus, minus, equals, understanding that success changes the movable feast, so you have to keep learning.
Generating new ideas by combining old ones, idea sex. Finding your unique angle, being the only, not just the best.
Learning idea calculus to generate and filter ideas, using techniques like being invisible to learn deeply, and building resilience to wobble without falling down.
Plus, reclaiming your time, focusing on access over ownership, expanding ideas with the spoken wheel.
And understanding models for big impact, managing risk with the inserto technique, and absorbing those core life rules. It's a really rich toolkit.
So the promise is, by embracing these ideas, you can learn faster, adapt better, and maybe reach your goals more effectively, maybe even quicker.
That's definitely the core message, like a different way to approach growth and achievement in a world that's constantly changing.
Okay, so a final thought for everyone listening. As you reflect on all this, which specific skip-the-line technique feels like it could make a difference for you right now? What's one small, low-risk experiment you could actually try today or this week based on these ideas?
That's a great question to ponder. And of course, if this sparked your interest, digging into the full book, Skip the Line by James Altucher, will give you even more depth and detail on all these concepts.